In this Grasshopper tutorial, we're going to study the Islamic Art Museum at Louvre. So basically, we're going to talk about the plan. You can see that I can change it here, the size of the rectangle, basically, which produces the surface. Then we're going to make a network of surface and explain how we can change the form. So you can see that I can change this form based on moving some points, which I will explain in this tutorial. And then we are going to talk about the parts which we can produce a space truss, and you can see that we can produce a space truss on that. And I'm going to explain how we can also produce those surfaces on the bottom of this section, because it's going to be a challenge. So you're going to also learn about this in this tutorial. As you can see, this is the base surface. It's a freeform surface, and we want to make a surface in Grasshopper which is inspired by this roof, and it's basically a parametric roof, which we are going to explain about this. I'm going to show you a video about this which I have found in different websites, and then we're going to start this video tutorial. Okay, before we start this video tutorial from scratch, if you're new to our channel, welcome and consider subscribing. And I also will put up a video tutorial up here which you can understand what is Grasshopper and why you should learn it, and also a beginner tutorial. And we also have a complete course which we will put advanced tutorials in the course lesson. If you want to enroll, you can also watch the lessons up here. I will put it in this card section. Okay, so let's get started from scratch. And what I want to do here is to produce the base plan of the parametric surface. So I'm going to go to the curve section, and in the primitive I'm going to choose a rectangle. So we can choose rectangle from 2 point, but this one is really easy. We can just put it in the canvas. Let's just use the bifocal plugin so you can see what I'm doing, and you can see it's on the XY plane. The X size is a domain which is -1 to 1, but if you give it a number, assume that I give this a 12, it's going to be from 0 to 12. Okay, so it will start from something like this, and it will not go in the negative part of the axis. So I'm going to give this a simple number, copy this, and we can control the size of this plan if we want to later. Okay, so what I want to do, the algorithm is not really complicated. What we want to do is to deconstruct this or explode the curve, and then divide the segments into points, right, and move these points up in the z direction. So we can move them in different z directions, and then if we connect them, we will produce a parametric curve which we can control with number sliders, and then we can produce the NURBS surface. So I'm going to go to the curve section and use the explode, which will explode the curve into smaller segments, and give the rectangle to this. You can see that we have 4 different line curves, and we're going to go to the sets and choose the list item to pick them out. Especially if we want to select, we always use the list item. So this is going to be the index of 0. I'm going to zoom in and say I want the +1, 2, and 3. Okay, so these are the 4 edges we have here. The next part is to work with one of those edges and then go for the other edges. So I'm going to give and connect a curve from the params menu to this, and then copy this for other edges. Let's just do that. We want to go to the curve section, divide, or you can simply also type divide here if you want to find this. It will divide it into numbers. You can see that this one divides the curve into equal length segments. So I want to maybe divide this. Let me extract this one. Instead of giving it a number slider, I'm going to set a number. Maybe 5 is fine, and it will give us 6 points, right? It's 5 segments, which will give us 6 points, and that's fine. If you want to increase that, you can, but it's going to give you a really more control over the surface if you want, so that's fine. Now we have 6 points. We want to move them in the z direction, so we just simply type move, mv, move these points. The motion or the vector is in the z direction, and I'm going to give them 6 different number sliders. Instead of just copying a number slider, and let me just show you here, Control C, Control V, instead of just using different number sliders to move these points, what I want to do is to go to the params menu and use this gene pool, because it gives you a complete, compact series of number sliders, and you can also use that for the Galapagos plugin if you want to optimize. So I want to just double click on this and say I want 6 number sliders from 0 to maybe 20, and you can see that this can be for the first point. Okay, I guess that 10 is fine. You can control that in your project. So you can see that I can move these points up and down, and let's just turn them off. And now we can just simply connect them into a curve. So I'm going to go to the curve section and use an interpolation to connect them as a curve or a NURBS curve. Then we can just turn this off. You can see that we have a complete parametric curve which we can control. So you can see how easy the concept is. Now we have to tweak a little bit of things here. If I copy this, and let's say that we have to divide this all for 5, so I'm going to put this outside and copy this complete section, Control C, Control V, so it uses the division number 5 for this one too, and then give the second edge to this curve section, right? It's going to produce another curve here, which you can see we can control. The most important thing here is that when we reach the n number 6.25, we want to put this number as the first number here, right? So I'm going to double click this, and instead of 6, I'm going to give it a 5 and pick up this number by simply going to the list item. This is index 5. So what I want to do is to reverse the index. So this one is going to be 0, 1, 2, and 2. And I'm going to right click, reverse, and the index 0 will just get 4.67 here outside. So remember, you can reverse the list. And now what we want to do is to say this is the first number, and then these are the other movements. Now you can see that this is controlling the both curves. Okay, let's just copy this again, give this to the next edge. We have to give this number to the first, so I'm going to connect this one to the list item. Remember, you have to fix that. So this one is going to also be in this corner, and another one here which we want to connect the last edge. Okay, we have to give this number to here. And again, we have a problem. We have to fix the last number here, which is basically the first number in the first edge. So I'm going to pick this with a list item. 0 is a fine, which will pick the first number and bring this down. Take this to 4 number sliders and with a shift key add this to the list. So now you can see that this number will also control the last edge. So we have produced a series of curves which we can now give to a network. So I'm going to go to the surface, to freeform, and here we go to the network of surface, because we have a series of UV curves. That means this one is U and these are V's, right? Or something like that. So I'm going to go to the network surface. This edge is going to go to the U. Let's just use a shift key to add this one. Okay. The next one is going to be the V. It's going to give you an error because they have to be the same or matched. So I'm going to use the shift key to add this one. Okay. So now you can see we have, let's go to the display section and connect a custom preview so we can see this better, and we can change these with this number slider. Another thing you can use with the gene pool is to right click and randomize, so you can see that we can also randomize these numbers, or we can control them easily by moving the curves. Okay, so the last thing I want to say about producing the surface here is that maybe we want to have something like this here. Okay, we want to control and add other sections to the surface. So I'm just going to add one section. Okay, you can always add whatever you want. So let's just do that. I'm going to change this so you can see this is a freeform surface. Okay, the trick is that you can go to the curve section, and I'm going to use the evaluate curve. Assume that we want to work with this edge. I'm going to give it to the curve. Remember, you have to have a reparameterized curve, so I'm going to right click and reparameterize. If you don't know about this, I'm going to put up a video about, we had a tutorial about evaluate curve, so you can also watch that. And also we talked about the reparameterized thing. So I'm going to give a number between 0 and 1. You can see that we can just define which section we want. We have to find another point on the next curve, so I'm going to copy this without the number and give this to this curve. Okay, the problem here is that you can see that these curves are in different direction. This one is like in this direction and this one is like in here. So the problem is that the directions are not the same. We have to go here, go to the curve section and use this flip curve to fix that. So I'm going to flip the curve. And now we'll have, you can use this to always define a section. So this is really easy. What we want to do is to bring this forward. Okay, I'm going to go to the curve section and put a line between these 2 points. You can see that I have produced a line here. Now it's time to divide this line and just do the same as we did with this edges. Okay, so just divide. You can define the count. Maybe we want to define the 5 or 6 is fine, based on how many divisions you need. Now we want to move these points in the Z direction. And remember, the first point and the last one, let me show you here, these 2 points have to be 0 because we want to put them on the edge to have more accurate results. So first we're going to if we have 7 points here, we need 5 numbers. So let's just go to the gene pool and just put this to 5. I'm going to go to the parameters menu and pick up an integer. Put this to 0. and just make a copy of this. So it's going to be 0, these numbers, and then again 0. So let's just connect them. Okay, you can see that these will just move these points. Because we don't want to move them too much, we can simply add negative numbers here too. So maybe -2 to +3. Based on your project, you can move these points up and down. Okay, I guess that we can say 5. Maybe we want to move them to 5 meters up. And now we can again connect this as an interpolation. You can see that we have add a section, and then we can turn them off. Okay, so whenever you want to add a section, you can simply just copy this and move this a little bit forward and say that I want to define 2 sections in these parts, right? And we can just move them in different heights. So how can we add this to the networks we had here? Let's just go on. You just check out the interpolation. You can see that this is U, this is V. Okay, so these are the V directions, right? Consider connecting these curves again. So this one was the first one. I want to explain the most important thing of network surface here. This one was the first one. Next, I'm going to add this one, and then this one, and then we had this curve, right? So you can see that this doesn't give us the results. The reason here is if I zoom in the curves V, you can see that we have different trees of data or groups of data. This is because when we had these two curves and we produced a line there and then made the line move and produce that curve, this curve is going to be, if this curve is in group 0, 0, 0, this one will be up that because we made this curve from this curve, right? So this is the way Grasshopper manages data and adds 0 to that group. And because it's important, we simply don't add up these things. The problem here is if we flatten this, you can see that we don't get results because the flattening of the input just doesn't make those curves in the right directions. That the best thing you can do, let me just disconnect all and just take out the flatten. Or what I prefer to do is to flatten all of those curves which we have in a series. So flatten this one, flatten this curve. Let's just zoom here, flatten, flatten, and now connect the results. This is really a great tip you can use to produce the network surface. I'm using the shift key. Okay, this was the second curve, so let me just fix that. This was the first one. This was the second one, the third one. And remember, if you just take this section here, we'll have problems. Okay, so remember you have to be cautious about these things. And I'm going to connect the last curve here. So here it goes. You can see how easy it is to produce and control the sections here. And if I connect a custom preview, you will have these results here. Okay, so after we produce the surface, let me just change these numbers here. If you want to produce different results, you can just turn off all the curves and produce the surface. The next part is to produce those panels. So what I prefer to do is to use the Lunchbox plugin. I will also put the plugins I've used and the definition on our website, so you can download that. I'm going to go to the Lunchbox plugin after installation and use two different things. The first one is to use the panel section and this triangular panels A. So I'm going to use that triangle panel A, give this to the surface, just turn this off, and connect this to the custom preview so you can see that, and define a division, maybe 8 to 18. This is the U division. This is a V division. Another thing I want to explain is that when we produce the surface, you can see that this, you go to the shaded mode, some of those isocurves are near each other. So if you rebuild that surface, it's going to give you a better distribution of the UV curves. So what you can do is to go to the utility and use this rebuild surface tool before you use those panels and those things. So I'm going to rebuild this surface. The degrees is 3, so that's fine. I'm going to give this a 30 division numbers for U and V. So you can see that this can produce better results. If I just connect this one to the panels, you can see that it's refining the surface. So you can also use this technique if you want to produce a better distribution of those panels. So this is the top surface and top panels of the roof, and what we want to do is to go to the structure and use this space truss structure number 1. So I'm going to put this one and connect the rebuild surface here. We have to give this the UV divisions we gave to the triangle panels A, so I'm going to give this to the UV, and here we go. You can see these primary lines sit on the panels. If I want to show you that, I'm going to connect a curve to this, so you can see this is the primary lines of the top section. Let's change the truss depth, so I'm going to give this 2.25 and control this part. Okay, so you have to be where you can't offset this too much. Okay, so this is the truss depth, and now what we need here is the panels down of this roof. We want to make the panels down here. Okay, it's going to be a little bit tricky, and we don't have any tool to fix this, but I'm going to give you some tricks you can use. If you install the Weaver plugin, I will put it in the website, you will have the Weaver bird, and I'm going to go to the create and use this mesh from lines. So I'm going to go to the mesh from lines, connects to here, and you can see that it will produce a mesh on the next section here. Okay, that's great. But if you want to use another technique to produce the panels like this, 2 set of triangles, we have to fix this mesh. So this part is going to be advanced for those who want to know more technique about this. I'm going to produce 2 set of triangles here. Just look at this section. I'm going to also put another plugin. This is lots of plugin used in this tutorial, and that's called a mesh explode, right? Mesh explode is basically, let me go to the file special folder in the component folder. It's called a mesh edit. So you have to install this mesh edit thing here, and then you will have it. So you just simply put it in the component folder or drag it onto the canvas. So let me just go here, and we have to explode. What it does, it makes all of those meshes into each face. Now what we want to do is to go to the mesh and use a deconstruct mesh tool. Each of them will have 4 vertices. I'm going to go to the list item and extract all of those vertices, right? So we will have 4 vertices here. Let me just turn this off, this panel up there. Okay, if I want to connect them with a surface, if I go to the surface section, we will have this 4-point surface. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you can see that the problem here is some of them are in this direction and some of them are in this direction, right? That's a problem. So this is a complete advanced tutorial just for you. For those who have watched this tutorial till the end, I'm going to give you a great tip here. How can we fix these direction problems here? The problem here is that the numbers are 0, 1, 2, 3, okay, for this one, and maybe this one is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. So we have to rewrite all of those points here. I'm going to go to the vector section, points, and use the sort along a curve. We have this kind of lessons in the course lessons. So for those who have enrolled in our course, they know that we can use the sort along the curve tool. So for now, you can just sort these vertices, and we have to produce a curve here. So the trick here is to, let me just show you the mesh edges so you can see it. Okay. I'm going to make an area centroid of those faces. This is a trick you can use. Then I'm going to make a circle on the centroid. It's going to give a circle. Let's just make this smaller, just so you can see it. And this circle has a seam. It's going to produce a circle like that. So it's going to sort those points all by one direction. So I'm going to give this to the circle, but you have to be aware. These are in groups of 4, and you can see that we have 110 groups, but this one is not in groups. So we have to graph this. For those who have watched this tutorial till now, I'm going to put up another tutorial up there so you know flatten and graph. Check that tutorial out. So I'm going to graph this thing, and now see what happens when we go to the 4-point surfaces. 1, 2, 3. You can see that all of them are in one direction. So have this technique if you want to sort those points, because we are in a coding world. We can't just take that with hand, and you can just make this happen. If you want to change the direction by this way, another technique you can use is to rotate those circles. Okay, let me just show you here. We can rotate. I want to give you the best solution, so I guess this is more easier. An XY plane will be the plane of the circle, and I'm going to rotate the plane an angle with degree and say 90 degrees. I'm going to rotate the circle's seam, so you can see that this is changing the direction of those panels. This is also a cool thing you can do if you want to make that happen. So that was it. Now what we have to do to finish this tutorial is to also produce the next triangle. So I'm going to go to the 4-point surface, and if we had 0, 1, 2, we have to make 0, 2, and 3. So I'm going to maybe say 0, 2, and 3, and make that triangle. Here we go. So remember, you can also use this technique to produce the panels, and now we have the panels right here. We have the panels down the structure. This was just a short tutorial, because if it's a real program or a real building thing, we have to go on lots of plugins. We have to make these sections the same size. So this tutorial is just for knowing more about Grasshopper and see how you can model this in Grasshopper. And we have this web lines if we want to make the structure inside that, and that's it. So that was the tutorial of how you can produce the Louvre Museum roof with Grasshopper, and we can finally change dimensions, change the number of segments we had somewhere here, right? We can change the height of the truss. We can change the form. So you can see we had also 2 sections here which we can change the location. Let's just turn this line on so you can see that we are producing the section here. Okay, and then we can change those heights too. if we want to have more control over the surface and produce a complete NURBS surface with panels. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comments below. How was the tutorial? I know it's a little bit difficult because we had lots of things to do and a long tutorial here, but anyway, I think it's worth it so you can understand those, especially the part when which we sorted the points, and that was really cool. You can do that with Grasshopper. If you want to make that in coding, that's going to take a long time to just write those codes, but we can use that in Grasshopper to understand what we are going to produce in the future. Thanks for watching and see you next time.